All right, so everybody knows that on a Sony, the S&Q mode is a very convenient yet useless feature. And I say that because when you use the S&Q mode, the quality of the video differs, from using 120p, say if you shoot in slow-mo or something like that, or 60p when you shoot in slow-mo in 24 frames per second. So like I said, everyone knows that the S&Q mode is a very convenient yet useless feature. So today I'm going to show you guys how I use the S&Q mode and how I use my camera to shoot slow motion, and use the S&Q mode as a guideline for how fast or slow my movement is going to be. So I don't necessarily use the S&Q mode, but what I do is I use it as a reference. So this way I know how fast or slow to move the camera up and down, left or right when I'm shooting slow motion. So if I'm shooting in 120 frames per second and I put it in S&Q mode, if I'm going this slow up and down and then I hit the playback on it, it's going to show me what the speed of my up and down movement is going, at that rate. So if I need to go faster and I want my footage to be slow but a little bit faster with the movement, then I'll go something like this. And then I'll hit the playback on the S&Q mode to see, exactly how the movement differs from the first trial and error run. So this way it gives me a nice reference guideline on what my footage is going to look like before I even put it into post into my editing software to look it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys into the back of my Sony a7 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, so what I'm doing here is I'm going to show you on the back of my a7 III how I set up my S&Q mode. So I go to S&Q mode, I click on there, I choose the frame rate 24, then I come down to how many frames per second I want it to be, and I'm going to use 120 frames per second since I typically shoot in 120 frames per second slow-mo. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the menu button to exit out of here. So that's my S&Q. So then what I'll do is I'll come to the top of my camera right here, and on the dial I'll turn it to S&Q mode. So now it's on S&Q mode. S&Q mode is already set up. So then what I'll then do is I'll hit record, and then I'll move the camera up and down like this, and then I'll hit record again to stop it, and then I'll hit the playback to see how fast it was. And you see right there, just from that small up and down movement, I get to see what my footage is going to look like before I put it in post and slow it down to its proper speed at 120. So maybe that's a little too fast for me. So what I'll do is I'll go stop it, and then I'll hit record again and then re-record it. Up and down, up and down. I'll stop it, and then I'll hit replay again. Then I'll review the footage to see, if the movement is as fast or as slow as I want. So there you go, that's a little bit slower. So it gives it a more cinematic feel. And that there is how I use S&Q mode, to preview my slow motion footage before I put it into post. So this right here, I don't use it. I just use it as a reference for speed of how fast or slow my movement is going to be. So then what I'll do is, once I know how fast or slow to move to get it to how I want it, then I'll come back into my camera. I'll go back to my setting on here, my memory setting, which is 2 for my slow motion, 1/250th at 4 at 24p at 120 frames per second, and then I'll hit the record button, and then I'll record it regularly. Now this right here ain't gonna have playback because you have to slow it down in post, but this is how you get the high quality slow motion. So then I'll go back, review the footage, and that right there is fast because you have to slow it down in post. So that's basically it right there, guys, how I set up my camera to shoot 120 frames per second slow motion using S&Q mode as a guideline, not necessarily using it, but using it as a guideline, because everyone knows that S&Q mode on Sony cameras suck because the bit rate and megabits per second are super relatively low. I believe it's like around 12 to 21 megabytes per second. So I mean, that's pretty much useless. But if you shoot it manually at 120 frames per second at 24p, then you're going to get 100 megabytes per second, give you that nice, warm, buttery, smooth, silky, soft, succulent, voluptuous slow motion that everyone in the industry uses. To name a few: Peter McKinnon, Matty Hapoya, and Chris Howe. I name those three because I know those three typically work together, but that's how those guys get that nice, soft, buttery, silky, smooth 120 frames per second, by shooting it manually, not using S&Q mode. Chris Howe, of course, he uses Sony. Matty Hapoya, he uses different cameras, and of course everyone knows Peter McKinnon, he uses 100% Sony. And everyone knows Peter McKinnon uses 100% Canon, all the time. So there you have it. Hope you guys like this video. If you have anything to add to it, how you guys shoot your slow motion, you can put it down in the comment section below. As always, give this video a like. Don't forget to share and turn on the notification bell and subscribe. All right, see you guys in the next one.